Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the most recent Sitting Comfortably podcast. This is Laurel Lindstrom speaking, reading from the Draftsman, my first novel. It's an absolutely stunning day here in East Sussex, so as soon as this is done, I'm off. Right, yes, the Draftsman. We've already done, 4 podcasts about this, so I suggest you go and listen to those rather than me having to recap what was said in them. We're in chapter 1 of the Draftsman, and we're just about to find out a little bit more about Shadowhurst, the house that the Draftsman recently bought and moved into. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Shadowhurst had belonged to one of Alison's husband's cousins, a woman whose taste in lifestyles and people tended to guileless and usually disappointing excess, a sorry trail of feathers flounced, plucked and faded, and the flint of reality's brutal sharp gash. Alison's husband's cousin had insisted on this massive square bungalow, its Arctic rooms, and the then elegant grounds, with some idea that she and her husband could play country squire and his lady and be happy. But their feathers and flint lifestyle involved too many ill-conceived investments, unexpected costs and repairs for things you never think need mending, like terraces and hedges. Too many more expenses for invisible necessaries like sewage collection and heating oil. All of it was beyond the means of feathers and flint, no matter how graceful or sharp. Too little money, too many bad choices, too much denial, too few options. Same old boring litany of disintegration and slow decline. When the husband pegged it, Alison's husband's cousin had no choice but to face her own denials, though she seemed not to see them. "It's all fine, of course it is," and hanging up on concerned relations to crack open a bottle of ever-cheaper gin, so much more genteel than vodka or whiskey. Over Christmas cocktails and the top of her sadly empty glass, Alison's husband's cousin told Alison that she wanted to sell up. The confidence came almost as soon as Alison was in range. "The place is just too much for me without him, you know. It's just too much." Her husband's cousin had explained, sucking on a lemon slice and eyeing up the party bar. Later, she reminded Alison again, this time ending her sentence with a confidential hic and a small snort as she repeated with a sage nod, "This is just too much now." She was weaving slightly, wild-eyed, and her colour rising to 2 perfect circles of red on her cheeks and a daub of red moustache across her upper lip. She pushed back her blonde-streaked hair, arched her eyebrows, and made wide her eyes, and asked Alison to join her for a sneaky fag. She put a wavering finger almost to her lips before ambling off out of range of Alison's withering disdain, which she hadn't noticed. Alison, empty sherry glass in hand, had been about to give Roger the nod that it was time to leave. Her mind had been elsewhere, wondering what to do about her brother, his grungy lifestyle, his appalling health, and his perpetually fragile state of mind. And why did those incidents with strangers keep happening? What did he do to get it so spectacularly wrong? And why did she never get to meet any of these people? Did he even have them in his life, or were they just a lonely series of unfulfilling one-night stands? Shadowhurst might be an answer, at least to part of the puzzle. She went out into the garden to where her husband's cousin was dragging fruitlessly on a shrunken dog-end, looked her in the eye and said, "I might have an answer. Let's see what I can do." A childish smile spread across her husband's cousin's face before, with an incoherent mumble, she sank gracefully into a small shrub that was not so small that it couldn't accommodate her slow and dignified slide into the flower-bed's soft embrace. Empty glass in hand, she continued to smile, benign and content, in the general direction of her cousin's wife and her cousin's wife's remarkably similar-looking companion. What Alison could do was what brought Martin to Shadowhurst and her husband's cousin to a new and fortunately far-away life. As Alison's husband's cousin put it on a postcard, she was roaming somewhere altogether elsewhere, like Alden's caribou. Alison had no idea what she was on about and didn't much care. Turning from the light fading into the lake, Martin handed her phone back and said, "He's coming down tomorrow." His voice emotionless and flat. "That's good. He'll be able to help you decide what else you need." "It's okay, it's all fine. I don't need anything. He just wants to see the place, hang out." Alison pictured Joshua coming down tomorrow, arriving in a London taxi cab all the way from Hampstead, the meter almost steaming. He dressed the part, she knew, with the brogues and possibly one of those long waxed riding coats with a little shoulder cape, dark green, a suitable countryside disguise. Would he also bring a quilted Barber jacket and wellies, she wondered? Would he expect to stay the night here in the house? Leaving her, making notes on her list, Martin wandered off to inspect the room that had persuaded him to buy the house in the first place. It is a glass addition to the main building, projecting out over the steepest parts of the lawns and drawing the eye down to the lakes. It is completely made of glass. Glass roof, glass walls, glass doors, and resting as light, almost floating on a pale and golden expanse of beechwood floor. The glass goes top to bottom, edge to edge, side to side, and over. The walls and windows are the same and give a vaguely wavering view of the space beyond. The views on each of the three sides are different, but they are all, really, might be the same. When it rains, Martin watches the water running rills, ripples and wavy lines, rolling down across the surfaces, lurching into the gutters all around. The gutters are the only breaks in the glass between the windows of the ceiling and walls. They are too small, so they don't carry much water. Instead, the water bounces, fitful and urgent, undisciplined and chaotic, like a band of rowdy children dancing wild and unruly across the surfaces. The water runs, skidding off out of bounds to the edges of a watery world, so when it rains, Martin watches the world dappling grey through light and glass and water. He watches random urgent patterns twisting and then meandering elsewhere. He watches endless shifting pictures beyond white noise, curious imaginings that can never resolve into black and white, and yet that cannot touch him. Messages that only Martin can read. Blank and faceless, the glass still reflects an uninterrupted view. The scene still is open. Standing in the centre of the room that first day, Martin saw again the long sloping lawns. His eye journeyed slowly down to a small valley, and up the other side to a line of woods and muddled undergrowth. He decided he wanted sheep on the slope. They could graze across his lawns and fields, just as many as needed, so that no one had to mow. He could get some black and some white ones, so they would be decorative, in shifting contrasts with the greens. The lake was almost motionless now, silent, a secret hidden in the fading light. An air of slight foreboding was rising as the late afternoon darkened and turned to evening, something teasing and staring, a brooding challenge as the waters stirred slightly and a whispered breeze softly sighed. And that is the end of the first chapter. The next one of these that we'll do is going to be the beginning of chapter 2. I hope you'll join me and that you're enjoying it so far. Thank you. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.